Well, hello, and thank you for joining us as Tom and I are bringing you devotions on the living Jesus as we walk through the Gospel of John. Today we're going to focus on several verses in John chapter 11. And earlier in our devotions, we talked about that believing Jesus means trusting that he has authority over life. We don't just say, hey, God's got this. It makes a difference how we approach all of life, especially when things don't go our way. So today, Tom's going to read a passage that really speaks to this in John chapter 11.
Jesus was still angry as he arrived at the tomb, a cave with a stone rolled across its entrance. "Roll the stone aside," Jesus told them. But Martha, the dead man's sister, protested, "Lord, he's been dead for 4 days. The smell will be terrible." Jesus responded, "Didn't I tell you that you would see God's glory if you believe?" So they rolled the stone aside. Then Jesus looked up to heaven and said, "Father, thank you for hearing me. You always hear me, but I said it out loud for the sake of all these people standing here, so that they will believe you sent me." Then Jesus shouted, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound in grave clothes, his face wrapped in a headcloth. And Jesus told them, "Unwrap him and let him go." So the setup here is that Jesus didn't rush to heal this good friend of his. He stayed where he was, knowing that Lazarus would die. And he did that despite his friend's sisters begging him to come and heal him. But Lazarus did die, and at one point in the story, the sisters get a bit snippy with Jesus. One of them even says, if you'd been here, he wouldn't have died. In other words, they were saying, Jesus, we know what's best.
Well, and if they knew what's best, then Jesus should have listened to them, right? Because women know best, right?
I'll go there.
That's how it is with us in a way, too, really too often, because this makes me think of a period in our lives when we both knew that God was calling us into something different, and we tried very hard to figure out what that different thing was. And every time we thought we logically knew which way to go, God would close a door.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
It was very frustrating. It was a very frustrating time. And only when we turned it over completely to his will did the doors open, and that we were able to follow easily into his will. And it created a situation that we really never would have ever imagined ourselves.
Yeah, and I do remember that time in our lives, and it was very frustrating. I went through depression through that time, trying to define. I kept going back to what I'd always been reared to believe is the sign that we're doing well. And I know my parents always taught me that as long as you're in God's will, you're doing fine. But I had just poured so much of what culture is informing me about that into those moments. And that lasted, that was like over a year.
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't just an overnight thing.
A couple of years.
Well, and that's just like it is in the story. Jesus takes the worst and shows us God's glory. Just because God's got this doesn't mean it's going to work the way that we want it to. That happens sometimes, and it's great when it does, but real faith means trusting that even when things don't go our way, it's still great because God's showing his glory to people. That's keeping our eyes on the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
You want to pray?
Yeah, I'll pray. Okay. Lord, forgive us when we get frustrated with you and your timing and your will. Whatever we're struggling with today, we know that you've got it. Help us when our faith is weak, because more than anything, we want to see your glory shine. We love you, Lord, and thank you for loving us. Amen.
Amen. Thanks for joining us today. We look forward to coming to you tomorrow with another part of the Gospel of John. Until then, you all have a blessed day. God be with you.